Ethan Cole wasn't supposed to be home that night. His board meeting in Tokyo had been canceled at the last minute, and all he could think about was surprising Vanessa, the woman he planned to marry in 2 weeks. But as he stepped inside his mansion, the sound of a child crying froze him in place. He followed the voice, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Vanessa, his beautiful, polished fiancée, was dumping a bucket of filthy water over a trembling woman and a little girl. "You filthy beggars," she hissed. The beggar looked up, and Ethan recognized her face instantly. Vanessa's mother. The private jet touched down earlier than anyone expected. Ethan Cole stepped out into the soft glow of the runway lights, adjusting his dark coat against the cold night breeze. Tokyo had been a whirlwind, endless meetings, a contract that dissolved at the last minute, and a dozen executives apologizing for wasting his time. But none of that mattered. The only thing on his mind was Vanessa. He smiled at the thought of her effortless grace, her laugh that could light up any room. They'd been engaged for 6 months, and in 2 weeks, they were set to marry. For Ethan, who had spent most of his life building an empire instead of relationships, she was a miracle, or so he thought. "Sir, should we drop you at your office of the mansion?" his driver, Adam, asked as the limousine door opened. Ethan glanced at his watch. It was nearly 9 in the evening. "She'll still be awake," he murmured. Then, smiling, he said, "The mansion, I think I'll surprise her." He stopped on the way, buying a bouquet of white lilies, Vanessa's favorite, and a small velvet box with a diamond bracelet he'd had custom made in Japan. It was engraved with 2 simple words, "Forever yours." The city lights blurred by as he imagined her face lighting up at the sight of him. She loved surprises, or at least that's what she said. The thought of seeing her again, after days of cold boardrooms and business jargon, made his heart lighter. The gates of the mansion opened silently. Inside, the house looked peaceful, every window lit with a warm golden glow. He dismissed the staff for the night, preferring to walk in quietly and catch Vanessa off guard. As he stepped into the foyer, the faint scent of vanilla candles reached him. Her favorite. Everything was just as elegant as always. Marble floors, gleaming chandeliers, a grand piano in the corner. But somewhere beyond the luxury, something felt off. He frowned. There was noise. Not music, not laughter, shouting. A woman's voice, sharp and cruel, coming from the backyard. He set the flowers down on the console and followed the sound. At first, he thought he was mistaken. But as he drew closer to the kitchen door that opened the back patio, he froze. Through the glass, he saw Vanessa, his Vanessa, standing in her silk robe, her face twisted with anger. In her hands, she held a silver bucket filled with gray, dirty water. In front of her stood 2 figures, a trembling woman in a faded uniform and a little girl clutching the woman's leg. The older woman's hands were clasped together, her head bowed. The girl was crying softly, her bare feet on the cold tiles. "You filthy things." Vanessa shouted, "I told you to clean properly. You can't even mop the floor, right? You think because I gave you food you can act like you belong here." Ethan's heart stopped. The woman tried to speak, her voice shaking. "I'm sorry, miss. The mop broke. I'll clean it again." Vanessa didn't let her finish. She lifted the bucket and poured the dirty water over both of them. The child gasped, choking back tears as grime and soap splashed down her face and dress. "Maybe now you'll remember your place," Vanessa hissed. The little girl started to cry harder. The woman bent down, trying to shield her, her shoulders trembling as she whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart, it's okay." Ethan's hand tightened on the doorknob. His pulse hammered in his ears. This couldn't be real. He pushed the door open, and his voice cut through the night like a blade. "Vanessa!" The bucket clattered to the floor. Vanessa spun around, color draining from her face. "Ethan, you're home early. This isn't." He walked toward her, his eyes burning with disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" "It's not what it looks like," she stammered. This woman, she was being disrespectful. The older woman turned then, and for the first time, Ethan saw her face clearly under the porch light. Her hair was streaked with gray, her skin weathered but kind. Her eyes, wide, frightened, were the same soft hazel as Vanessa's. Ethan's breath caught. Wait, she looks like. The woman lowered her gaze, tears filling her eyes. Mr. Cole, please don't be angry with her. She's my daughter. The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan's world tilted. He looked from the woman to Vanessa, whose lips trembled before she exploded. Don't listen to her. She's lying. She's not my... But the woman, Martha, shook her head sadly. You told me never to say it out loud. Vanessa, but I can't let this kind man think I'm just some servant you can humiliate. The child, Lila, peeked up, whispering, Grandma, are we going to be okay? That word, Grandma, landed like thunder. Ethan's throat went dry. You did this to your own mother? Vanessa's eyes darted wildly, panic setting in. She doesn't understand boundaries. She's always been like this, embarrassing me, showing up when she shouldn't. Ethan couldn't listen anymore. He walked past her, kneeling beside Martha and the little girl. He pulled a towel from the rack and handed it to them gently. I'm so sorry, he said softly. No one deserves this. Not you, not her. Martha shook her head, still trembling. You have nothing to be sorry for, sir. But Ethan's heart ached. The woman's humility only made Vanessa's cruelty clearer. When he turned back to Vanessa, his voice was colder than she'd ever heard it. Go inside, he said quietly. We'll talk later. Vanessa opened her mouth to argue, but one look at his eyes silenced her. Ethan helped Martha and the little girl to their feet, leading them toward the car. As he guided them into the warmth of his limousine, he glanced once more toward the mansion. The lights that once felt welcoming now seemed to glare, exposing a truth he could never unsee. That night, as the car pulled away, Ethan realized something terrifying. He'd fallen in love with a woman whose heart was darker than he'd ever imagined. The car glided through the quiet streets, headlights slicing through the dark. Inside, Ethan sat beside Martha and the trembling child, silence thick around them. Lila, clutching her grandmother's wet sleeve, shivered softly. Martha tried to calm her, though her hands trembled just as much. Are you warm enough? Ethan asked gently. Martha nodded. We'll be fine, sir. Please, you didn't have to bring us. We'll just walk home. Ethan shook his head. You're not walking anywhere like this. And please call me Ethan. He handed Lila his jacket, which swallowed her small frame completely. The little girl gave him a shy smile, whispering a tiny thank you. He couldn't stop glancing at Martha in the reflection of the window, her soaked hair, the quiet dignity in the way she held herself, and the deep sadness in her eyes. A woman like that didn't deserve humiliation. When they reached the small, run-down apartment building, Martha murmured, Here, this is our stop. Ethan looked at the cracked walls and dim lights of the place. His chest tightened. He got out and opened the door for them. Please let me walk you in. Martha hesitated but nodded. Inside, the apartment was simple but spotless. Neatly folded laundry, a few toys, the faint scent of chamomile tea. Despite everything, it felt like home. Can I make you some tea? She asked softly. Ethan shook his head. You've done enough for tonight. I just need to understand. That woman, Vanessa, she's your daughter? Martha sat down slowly, her hands clasped in her lap. Yes, she is. My only surviving one. Lila climbed onto her grandmother's lap, eyes still wet. Ethan knelt to her level. Hey there, sweetheart. You okay? She nodded bravely. Mommy says when bad people shout, it's because they're sad inside. The innocence in her voice made Ethan's throat tighten. He looked up at Martha, who sighed deeply. You deserve to know the truth, Mr. Cole. Martha's voice trembled at first, then steadied. I raised Vanessa alone. Her father left when she was 8. We didn't have much, but I did everything I could. Worked in a laundry, cleaned offices at night, sometimes 2 jobs. Vanessa was bright, beautiful. People used to stop me in the street to say how lovely she'd grow up to be. Her eyes softened at the memory. She dreamed big. I wanted that for her. I saved every penny to send her to a private school. But she started to hate where she came from. She'd asked me not to pick her up at school because she was ashamed of my uniform. Ethan listened silently, heart pounding. She won a scholarship for modeling and went off to the city. I thought she'd make something of herself. Martha's eyes dimmed, but success changed her. She stopped visiting. When I called, she said she had no mother, that she was reborn now. The last time we spoke before tonight, she said I embarrassed her just by existing. The old woman looked away, voice barely above a whisper. I never told anyone she was my daughter again, but when her sister passed away, I had no choice but to raise Lila. We needed money. I took a job through an agency as a cleaner. Tonight was my first shift. I didn't even realize whose house it was until I saw her. Ethan's eyes widened. Wait, you know? Martha shook her head. No, but she recognized me instantly. She told me to keep quiet. Said if I wanted to stay, I'd act like I was just another servant. I agreed for Lila's sake. I didn't want to cause trouble. But she poured that water because I dropped a vase. It wasn't on purpose. Her voice cracked. She always hated when things reminded her of where she came from. For a moment, Ethan couldn't speak. The woman sitting before him was everything Vanessa wasn't. Humble, selfless, kind. He rubbed his temples. And the girl, Lila, she's her niece? Yes, Martha whispered. Vanessa's older sister, Clara, died 3 years ago. Lila was only 4. Vanessa didn't even come to the funeral. Ethan leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The woman he'd almost married, the one he defended to everyone, was a stranger to him now. All her grace, all her charm, built on cruelty and lies. Martha stood slowly, trying to smile through her tears. You shouldn't blame yourself, sir. People see what they want to see. You saw her beauty, but not her heart, because she hid it well. He looked at her with deep regret. You've been through enough. I'll make sure you and Lila are taken care of. No more scrubbing floors. Martha shook her head quickly. No, please. I don't want charity. I can work. I just want to live quietly and raise my granddaughter. That's all. Her dignity struck him again, the strength in her humility. Lila tugged on his sleeve then, her big eyes curious. Are you going to marry the mean lady? Ethan gave a small, sad smile. Not anymore, sweetheart. She nodded seriously. Good. You can come have cookies with us instead. Despite everything, he laughed softly, the first laugh since stepping into that house. I like that. Martha smiled faintly. She has a way of healing hearts, that one. He glanced at Lila and then back at Martha. You both do. As he left the apartment, the night air felt heavier, but his mind was clear. Vanessa had crossed a line that could never be erased. When he reached the car, he looked back once more at the dim window of their little home. Inside that humble light was everything money couldn't buy. Kindness, love, and truth. He clenched his fists, jaw set. Tomorrow, he would confront Vanessa, not as her fiancée, but as a man who finally saw her for who she truly was. Ethan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the image returned, Vanessa's voice dripping with cruelty, the bucket tipping, the child's frightened cry. By morning, his heart had hardened. He stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie mechanically, but his reflection looked like a stranger, colder, older, and angrier than the man he'd been yesterday. The diamond bracelet still sat on his nightstand, unopened, a reminder how blind love could be. When he came downstairs, Vanessa was already at the breakfast table, wearing silk pajamas and a smile so sweet it felt poisonous. She was scrolling through her phone, humming softly to herself. Good morning, darling, she said without looking up. You didn't wake me last night. I missed you. Ethan didn't reply immediately. He poured himself a cup of coffee, letting the silence stretch. Finally, he said, I saw everything, Vanessa. Her smile froze. W, what do you mean? He met her eyes, calm but cutting. The backyard. Last night. You and the bucket. The woman you called a servant. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered on the table. For a moment, she looked genuinely terrified, then, like a mask being set back into place, she forced a laugh. Oh, that? Ethan, you're overreacting. She's just a troublesome cleaner. She lied to you. Ethan's jaw tightened. Lied about what? That she's your mother? Vanessa's face went pale. She said that. She didn't have to. You both have the same eyes. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for a coffee, pretending composure. Listen, you don't understand. That woman, she gave up on me. She wasn't a mother. She was a burden. Always poor, always embarrassing. I worked my way out of that life. Ethan, do you think high society people would take me seriously if they knew I came from that? Her voice rose, sharp and defensive. She chose to live like that. Cleaning houses, begging for work. I told her to stay away, but she just had to show up here and ruin everything. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes dark. She didn't ruin anything, Vanessa. You did. By treating her like dirt. By pouring filthy water on her and that child. She's not my child. Vanessa snapped. She's my sister's mistake. And I don't owe them anything. The words hit him like a slap. He stared at her, disbelief turning to quiet disgust. You know what's strange? You always spoke about kindness, about charity, about giving back. I thought it came from empathy. Now I realize it came from pride, from wanting to look good. Vanessa's composure cracked. Don't you dare talk to me like I'm some monster. You think I worked this hard just to be dragged down by them? I built myself into who I am, and I'm not letting anyone destroy that. Not even you. Ethan stood up slowly. You built yourself, yes, but you built it on lies. He turned toward the window, taking a deep breath before continuing. Do you even hear yourself, Vanessa? That woman loves you more than her own pride. She begged me not to judge you. She said you were good once. Vanessa flinched slightly. She said that? Yes. He faced her again. She said she used to be proud of you, that she worked her hands raw so you could have an education, and this is how you repay her. For the first time, Vanessa looked uncertain. Her lips parted as if to speak, but no words came out. Ethan's voice softened, but there was no forgiveness in it. I was going to marry you. I was ready to give you everything. But now, I don't even recognize you. Vanessa blinked rapidly, tears forming, but they felt rehearsed. Ethan, please, you can't just walk away. You don't know what it's like to grow up humiliated, looked down on. I had to change. I had to survive. He nodded slowly. Maybe you did, but surviving doesn't mean losing your soul. She stepped closer, her tone turning desperate. You can't leave me. You'd throw away everything we've built, our future? Our future, he repeated quietly. A future built on cruelty and lies? No, Vanessa, I'm not throwing it away. I'm saving myself from it. Her tears fell freely now, though whether from guilt or fear, he couldn't tell. Ethan, please, you need me. He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, I don't need someone who looks perfect. I need someone who is good, and you're not that person. He turned and walked out, leaving her in stunned silence. Outside, the morning sun was bright, almost cruelly so. He stepped into the car and gave Adam a quiet order. Take me to that address from last night. When they arrived, Martha was out front, sweeping the steps, her movement slow but steady. Lila ran up with a wide smile when she saw him. You came back. He smiled faintly. I did. I wanted to make sure you both were okay. Martha straightened, a little surprised but genuinely warm. Mr. Cole, you didn't need to trouble yourself. It's no trouble, he said. I owe you both an apology. I should have seen who she really was sooner. Martha sighed softly. You saw the good in her, that's all. The good I used to see. They sat together on the small porch, the morning quiet except for the hum of traffic far away. Ethan asked gently, Did she always hate you? Martha smiled sadly. No, she used to be my sunshine. But pain changes people. When her father left, she started believing love was weakness. She thought money would protect her from that pain. She's still living in that pain, Ethan murmured. Martha nodded. Yes, but pain can't be healed by pretending it never happened, only by facing it. Lila came over, holding a wrinkled paper flower. This is for you, Mr. Ethan. He took it carefully, his throat tightening. It's beautiful. The little girl grinned. Grandma says flowers make sad hearts better. He smiled faintly, staring at the fragile petals. She's right. As he looked at the two of them, the humble grandmother and the bright-eyed child, something stirred in him, a quiet realization. These were the people worth building a life around. Not those who sparkled in the light, but those who glowed even in the dark. He stood, straightening his jacket. "Martha, I'll make sure you and Lila never have to work or worry again." But she shook her head firmly. "No, Mr. Cole, I don't want pity. I just want a fair chance. Maybe a real job, one where I can stand on my own feet. That would be enough." He smiled, admiring her strength. "Then that's exactly what you'll get." As he left that morning, Ethan felt lighter but also determined. Vanessa's lies had opened his eyes, but Martha's grace had opened his heart. And he knew, deep down, this was just the beginning. The days that followed were heavy and quiet. Ethan kept to himself, burying his focus in the company offices downtown. He told his assistant to postpone all wedding plans and quietly contacted his lawyer to suspend the prenup finalization. He didn't tell Vanessa anything, not yet. He wanted to see what she'd do when she realized the ground beneath her was slipping. By the third day, Vanessa finally showed up at his office, uninvited, wearing her most expensive designer dress, the picture of confidence. Her heels clicked across the marble floor like gunshots. The receptionist froze, whispering, "Mr. Cole, she's here." Ethan glanced up from a contract as Vanessa stormed in, smiling too brightly. "There you are," she said. "I've been calling you all morning. Are you avoiding me?" Ethan set down his pen. "I've been busy." "Busy?" she scoffed, leaning against his desk. "Busy doing what? Hiding? You can't just disappear after one argument, Ethan." "One argument?" His voice was calm, controlled, almost too quiet. "Is that what you call what you did to your mother?" Vanessa's smile faltered. "I told you, she's not." "Enough," he said sharply, standing. "Don't insult my intelligence, Vanessa. I went to see her." Her expression froze completely. "You what?" "I went to her apartment," Ethan continued, stepping around his desk. "I met your niece, Lila, the little girl you left behind. I saw where they live. And do you know what I realized?" Vanessa's arms folded defensively, but her voice wavered. "You had no right." "I realized," he interrupted, "that your mother may not have money, but she has something you'll never understand, dignity." The words hit her like a slap. Her eyes flashed with anger. "Dignity doesn't pay bills, Ethan. Don't stand there pretending you understand what it's like to grow up humiliated. She never gave me anything. I built myself from nothing, from her failures." He looked at her with disbelief. "She gave you everything. Her time, her health, her life. She scrubbed floors so you could walk into your world of glass and silk." "Stop romanticizing poverty," she snapped. "You think kindness fills stomachs? It doesn't. I refuse to be like her. That's why I'm standing here, with you." She reached out to touch his arm, but he stepped back. "Don't," he said flatly. Her hand froze midair. "Ethan, I didn't fall in love with who you are," he said quietly. "I fell in love with who I thought you were." Vanessa's face hardened. "You're making a mistake. You think that old woman can replace me? She'll only drag you down." Ethan's jaw tightened. "That old woman raised a granddaughter who has more heart than you'll ever have." Her voice trembled with fury. "You're ruining your reputation, Ethan. You think society will respect you if you surround yourself with people like her? They'll laugh at you." He smiled faintly, a sad, tired smile. "Then let them laugh. At least I'll still respect myself." For a long moment, they stood in silence, two worlds colliding in one room. Then Vanessa's mask cracked, revealing raw desperation beneath. "You can't leave me," she whispered. "After everything we built, everything I've given you." Ethan turned away. "What you gave me was an illusion." She grabbed his wrist. "You think you can just walk away from me? You'll regret this." He looked down at her hand, then gently pulled free. "Maybe I will, but at least I won't regret being human." She stared at him, breathing hard. "So this is it? You're ending everything over Maid." Ethan's eyes burned. She's not a maid. She's your mother. And with that, he walked past her. Vanessa's voice cracked as he opened the door. You'll come crawling back, Ethan. No one turns their back on me. But her words echoed hollowly through the corridor. Ethan didn't look back. That evening, he visited Martha and Lila again. When Lila opened the door, she squealed in delight. Mr. Ethan, Grandma made cookies. Martha appeared behind her, apron dusted with flour, eyes soft with surprise. You shouldn't keep visiting us like this, sir. People will talk. Let them, Ethan said, smiling faintly. I'm tired of pretending for people who don't care. He sat at their tiny kitchen table while Lila offered him a cookie shaped like a heart. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, warm, real, human. Martha, he began, I ended things with Vanessa. She blinked, sadness flickering across her face. I'm sorry it came to that. I'm not, he said simply. I thought love was about admiration, but I see now it's about compassion. She nodded slowly. You've learned what some people never do. Lila climbed into his lap with childlike boldness. Grandma says you're sad. Do cookies help? Ethan chuckled softly, taking a bite. They do, very much. For the first time in days, his chest loosened. The tension, the betrayal, it all began to melt away in that small, cluttered kitchen filled with warmth and forgiveness. As the evening went on, Martha told stories about Vanessa's childhood, how she used to bring home stray animals, how she once gave her shoes to a classmate. She wasn't always this way, Martha said quietly. There was kindness in her once, but she learned that the world rewards cruelty faster than love. Ethan sighed. Then maybe it's time someone changed that. Martha smiled faintly. Maybe that someone is you. When he left their home that night, Ethan looked up at the stars, brighter than he'd noticed in years. His decision was clear now. He wasn't going to just move on. He was going to make something good out of the wreckage, something that would honor kindness, not cruelty. And as fate would have it, that chance would come sooner than he imagined. The next morning, Ethan Cole arrived at his office earlier than usual. The sun had barely risen, streaking gold over the city skyline. For the first time in weeks, the air felt lighter. He called in his assistant, Mason. I need a new project started, something off the books. Mason blinked. Off the books, sir? Yes, a housing initiative. Low-cost homes for single mothers and working families. I want it running quietly, no media, no name attached. Mason nodded, surprised. Of course. I'll assemble a small team. Ethan paused and added, and I want the first house built for Martha Green and her granddaughter, Lila. That was the beginning of a new chapter, not just for them, but for him. A week later, Ethan arrived at Martha's small apartment again, this time with a folder in hand. The old building creaked as he climbed the stairs. Lila's laughter echoed through the hall before she flung open the door. Mr. Ethan, Grandma's baking muffins again. Ethan smiled. She's going to spoil me. Martha appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. You're back already? I told you, you don't need to check on us. I'm not checking, he said gently, handing her the folder. I'm offering. She frowned, confused. What's this? A new home, Ethan said. A small house in Maplewood, safe, quiet, close to Lila's school. It's part of a new foundation I'm starting. It's yours if you'll accept it. Her hands trembled as she opened the folder, seeing the photos and documents. Ethan, I can't accept something like this. It's too much. It's not charity, he said softly. It's gratitude. She looked at him, eyes moist. For what? For reminding me what decency looks like, he said. I almost forgot. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Then she smiled, a soft, trembling smile that seemed to carry years of pain and pride. You're a good man, Ethan. He shook his head. Just trying to be better than I was yesterday. That weekend, Ethan personally drove them to see the new house. It was a modest, single-story home with a small garden, white fence, and wide porch. Lila ran across the yard, squealing with delight. We have grass. Grandma, we have grass. Martha stood at the gate, covering her mouth as tears slipped down her cheeks. Ethan handed her the keys. "Welcome home." She turned to him, trembling. "I don't know how to thank you. Just promise me one thing," he said. "Keep baking those muffins. They're the best thing I've ever had." She laughed softly, wiping her eyes. "You'll never run out, I promise." Lila came running back, holding a dandelion. "Mr. Ethan, make a wish." He took the flower, knelt beside her, and smiled. "I already got mine." But not everyone shared in their joy. Across town, Vanessa sat in her penthouse, clutching her phone in frustration. Her social circle had begun to whisper. Ethan had called off the engagement. And worse, he wasn't answering her messages. Her reflection in the mirror looked perfect, but her world was crumbling. The brands, the parties, the influence, all of it depended on her being Ethan Cole's fiancée. Without that title, doors were beginning to close. She slammed the phone down. "He can't do this to me," she hissed. Her best friend, Chloe, hesitated. "Vanessa, people are talking. Maybe you should just let it go." "Let it go." Vanessa's eyes flashed. "After everything I invested in him, he owes me." But in truth, the person she wronged wasn't Ethan. It was her own mother. And life was about to teach her that some debts can't be avoided forever. Back in Maplewood, the sound of hammering filled the quiet neighborhood. Ethan had sent workers to add a new porch swing and repaint the fence. Martha protested every day, but he wouldn't hear of it. "You're making me look rich," she teased one afternoon as she brought lemonade to the workers. Ethan chuckled. "Then it's about time the neighborhood had a rich woman who actually deserves it." She laughed, shaking her head. "Careful. You'll make me proud of myself again." "That's the plan," he said warmly. In the evenings, Ethan would stay for dinner. They'd talk about simple things. Lila's school art project, Martha's old recipes, how the stars looked different outside the city. It was the kind of peace he hadn't felt in years. Once, as Lila fell asleep on the couch, Ethan asked quietly, "Do you think Vanessa will ever change?" Martha looked thoughtful. "People can change," she said, "but only if they're willing to look in the mirror and not like what they see." He nodded slowly. "I don't think she's ready for that." "Then you have to let her go," Martha said softly. "Forgive her, even if she never says sorry." Ethan exhaled. "That's harder than it sounds." "Everything worth doing usually is," she replied. A month later, the local paper quietly ran a small story. Not about Ethan Cole, the billionaire, but about a mysterious benefactor funding homes for struggling families. The headline read, "Anonymous donor helps build hope in Maplewood." When Martha saw it, she looked at Ethan with a knowing smile. "You really didn't want credit?" He shook his head. "Some things don't need an audience." But deep down, he knew something else too. This was just the beginning. Because redemption doesn't come from big gestures. It comes from small, steady acts of good, day after day, heart to heart. And though Vanessa's name had faded from his life, the lesson she left behind never would. The world of luxury was ruthless, and Vanessa Green was learning that the hard way. Within weeks of Ethan breaking off the engagement, the gossip columns had turned cold. Invitations to charity galas disappeared. Her phone barely rang anymore, except for messages that began with polite excuses. Unfortunately, the board decided, "We're restructuring our brand ambassadors." She sat alone in her lavish apartment one morning, scrolling through old photos of herself and Ethan, smiling at parties, traveling on private jets, wearing a kind of happiness that was never real. Now, those same people whispered behind her back. She used him. She was only in it for the money. No wonder he left her. Her chest burned with humiliation. She hurled her phone across the room, shattering it against the wall. That afternoon, Vanessa received an eviction notice. Her lavish lifestyle had been built on Ethan's support. The car, the apartment, even her designer wardrobe had all been temporary arrangements under his company's name. When the security team arrived to escort her out, she stood in disbelief. "You can't just throw me out. Do you know who I am?" One guard sighed. "We did, ma'am, but that's no longer relevant." Her fury cracked into despair. She screamed, threw her keys on the floor, and stormed out with nothing but 2 suitcases and pride that was quickly fading. For the first time in years, Vanessa had nowhere to go. By sunset, she found herself standing in front of a familiar old building. Peeling paint, flickering hallway lights, the faint smell of dust and old memories. Her mother's apartment. For 10 minutes she just stood there, frozen, clutching her bags. Pride battled desperation. But finally, exhaustion won. She knocked. The door creaked open. Martha appeared, surprised. Older, frightened perhaps, but with the same gentle eyes. For a long, painful moment, neither spoke. Then Martha whispered, "Vanessa?" Her daughter's chin trembled. Don't say my name like that." Martha stepped aside without another word. "Come in." Vanessa hesitated, then walked in slowly, past the tiny kitchen, the worn couch, the faded curtains. Everything looked smaller than she remembered, or maybe she'd just grown too used to excess. She dropped her bags. "I just need a place to stay for a few days. Don't make this a big deal." Martha's voice was soft. "You can stay as long as you need." The next morning, Vanessa woke to the smell of coffee and fresh bread. She found her mother humming softly in the kitchen, wearing her old apron. "Breakfast?" Martha asked gently. Vanessa frowned, taking a seat. "You're still baking at that shop?" "I am," her mother said with a smile. "It's honest work." Vanessa rolled her eyes. "You could have done more with your life. You just settled." Martha looked at her daughter quietly. "Maybe I did, but I settled with peace." That stung. Vanessa looked away. "Peace doesn't pay rent." Martha poured her coffee. "And yet, you had money and lost everything." The words were simple, but they hit like thunder. For a long time, Vanessa sat silently, stirring her coffee, her reflection rippling in the cup. Finally, she said in a whisper, "He hates me, doesn't he?" Martha didn't lie. "He's disappointed." "But hate? No. Ethan doesn't carry that kind of darkness." Vanessa's voice cracked. "He shouldn't have seen that day. I wasn't myself." Martha's hands trembled slightly. "No, sweetheart. That was yourself. The part you hid behind makeup and money. But it's not too late to find another version." Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. "I don't know how to start over." Martha smiled sadly. "By saying sorry, not to others, but to yourself first." Days passed. Vanessa tried to find work, but every door she knocked on seemed to remember her scandal. She was a gold digger fiancée, the woman who lost a billionaire. Her pride eroded bit by bit. One rainy afternoon, she returned home drenched and defeated. "Nobody will hire me, Mom. Nobody." Martha handed her a towel. "Then start smaller. The bakery down the street is hiring part-time help." Vanessa blinked. "A bakery? Me?" Martha met her eyes firmly. "Yes, you. You need to remember what real work feels like." Vanessa wanted to refuse, but something inside her finally broke. The next morning, she went. The first day at the bakery was humbling. Flour dusted her expensive clothes. Her hands ached from kneading dough. She dropped trays, burned cookies, and got scolded by customers who didn't recognize her, or worse, did. But at the end of the day, when the shop owner handed her a small envelope with her pay, she stared at it for a long moment. It wasn't much, but it was hers. That night, as she walked home under the city lights, she saw a familiar car parked nearby. Sleek, black, unmistakable. Ethan's. He was standing by the fence of Martha's little house, speaking softly to Lila. The child laughed, showing him something she'd drawn. Vanessa froze. Her heart clenched at the sight of the man she'd loved, now smiling in the warmth of home she'd once scorned. Martha appeared in the doorway, smiling kindly at Ethan. "Stay for dinner?" He nodded. "I'd love to." Vanessa turned away quickly before anyone could see her. She didn't belong there anymore. Not after everything she'd done. But as she walked home, tears blurred her vision. Not of anger this time, but regret. For the first time, she understood that she hadn't lost a billionaire. She had lost a good man. That night, Vanessa sat by the window in her mother's small apartment. The city glowed in the distance, mocking and beautiful. She whispered into the silence, "I wish I could undo it all." And in her heart, a tiny voice answered, not in words, but in the faintest flicker of hope, because maybe, just maybe, redemption was still possible, if she was willing to earn it. Months passed. The chill of winter softened into the first touch of spring. Vanessa had changed, not just in appearance, but in spirit. Her designer clothes had been replaced by simple dresses. Her hands, once manicured to perfection, now bore the faint traces of honest work. Tiny burns, bits of flour, and the quiet pride that came from earning her own living. Each morning, she helped her mother bake before sunrise. Each evening, she walked Lila home from school, and slowly, something she hadn't felt in years began to take root again. Peace. But the guilt never fully left her. Every time she saw Ethan's car drive past on weekends, stopping by Martha's new home, bringing groceries, playing with Lila, her heart twisted. He always smiled, always gentle, but he never looked at Vanessa again, until one day, fate decided it was time. It was a Saturday morning at the local farmer's market. Martha had set up a small stall, selling her famous muffins and pies. Vanessa helped arrange them neatly, brushing crumbs from the table. Business had been good lately. Locals adored Martha's warmth, and they'd come to admire her quiet, hard-working daughter, too. Vanessa was busy wrapping a customer's order when she heard a familiar voice. "I'll take one of those apple pies," the man said. Her hands froze mid-motion. Slowly, she looked up. Ethan Cole stood across the table, dressed casually in jeans and a gray shirt, his eyes steady and calm. For a moment, the world fell silent. Vanessa's breath caught. "Ethan," he gave a small nod. "Hi, Vanessa." Martha looked between them, heart heavy but hopeful. "I'll go restock the shelves," she said softly, stepping away. The silence between them was thick with unspoken memories. Finally, Vanessa whispered, "I didn't think I'd ever see you again." Ethan smiled faintly. "I've seen you plenty of times. You just didn't notice." Her brows furrowed. "Why?" "Because I want to know if you truly changed," he said simply. "And you have." She blinked, tears threatening. You watch me work? After everything I did?" He nodded. "You hurt people, but you also learn from it. That's what matters." Vanessa's voice cracked. "I was horrible to my mother, to you, to everyone who ever cared about me. I don't know how to undo that." Ethan's eyes softened. "You can't undo the past, Vanessa. You can only choose what kind of person you'll be from here on." Her tears finally fell. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." He took a breath. "Maybe not, but I'll give it anyway." She gasped softly. "Why?" "Because someone once told me that real strength isn't in holding grudges," he said, glancing toward Martha, who was smiling faintly from a distance. "It's in letting go of them." Vanessa covered her mouth as sobs escaped. Ethan reached out, placing a gentle hand on hers. For the first time, she didn't pull away. "You don't have to prove anything to me," he said quietly. "Just keep being the woman your mother always believed you could be." "I will," she whispered. "I promise." He smiled. "Good. Because she's proud of you, you know." Vanessa looked at him through tears. "And you?" He hesitated for a moment. "I'm proud, too." That single sentence broke her completely. She pressed her trembling hands to her chest, crying openly, but they were tears of release, not shame. When she finally looked up again, Ethan was still there, patient, kind, unguarded. "Thank you," she said softly, "for seeing something worth saving." He shook his head. "You saved yourself, Vanessa." Later that afternoon, Martha invited Ethan to join them for lunch. They sat outside the bakery under a tree, sharing laughter and homemade soup. Lila chattered endlessly about school, and for once, Vanessa didn't feel like an outsider. At one point, Lila climbed onto Ethan's lap, holding a drawing. "See, Uncle Ethan, that's Grandma, that's Aunt Vanessa, and that's you." He chuckled. "You drew me taller than everyone else." Lila grinned. "Because you're the hero." Everyone laughed, even Vanessa. Ethan looked at her then, really looked. not as a woman who betrayed him, but as someone who'd been broken and rebuilt. And in that moment, something subtle shifted. Not romance, not yet, but respect. The kind that could someday grow into something deeper, if time allowed. As the day faded, Ethan prepared to leave. Vanessa walked him to his car, the soft orange glow of sunset painting the world gold. "Ethan," she said quietly, "thank you for coming today. I didn't expect forgiveness, but it's more than I deserve." He turned to her with a gentle smile. "Then spend your life making sure you do deserve it." She nodded slowly. "I will." He reached into his pocket and handed her a folded flyer. "There's a new community foundation. We're hiring organizers to help with housing projects. I think you'd be good at it." She looked up, startled. "You'd really trust me with something like that?" Ethan shrugged lightly. "I trust who you're becoming." Tears shimmered again, but this time they came with a smile. "Then I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he said, stepping into his car. As he drove away, Vanessa stood in the fading light, holding that fly like a lifeline. Her heart was still fragile, still healing, but it was beating with something new, purpose. That night, she walked home beside her mother and Lila. Martha looped her arm through her daughter's, smiling up at the stars. "You did well today," Martha said softly. Vanessa looked at her, eyes glistening. "You think so?" Her mother squeezed her hand. "I don't think. I know." For the first time in years, Vanessa felt light, not because her life was perfect, but because she was finally at peace with who she was. As they reached home, she looked back once more toward the horizon, where Ethan's car lights had disappeared, and she whispered to herself, "This time, I'll build something real." A year later, Vanessa co-managed Ethan's housing foundation, helping dozens of struggling families rebuild their lives. Martha's bakery flourished, and little Lila grew up believing kindness was the most valuable thing anyone could own. And though Ethan and Vanessa's story had taken a painful path, it ended not with regret, but with grace. In the end, it wasn't wealth, pride, or beauty that defined them. It was forgiveness. The billionaire who once believed in perfection found peace in simplicity. The woman who once lived for status found salvation in humility. And the mother whose love never wavered became the quiet bridge that brought two broken souls back to grace. Because sometimes life's cruelest moments aren't punishments. They're invitations to become better. Ethan learned that love isn't about power. Vanessa learned that redemption isn't begged for, it's earned. And together, they prove that no matter how far one falls, compassion can always rebuild what pride once destroyed. Dizzy, the billionaire came home early and saw his fiancée pouring dirty water on her mother and daughter, a story of betrayal, forgiveness, and the kind of love that heals more than hearts. It heals souls.